Good morning. Please rise in body or spirit, and we will begin by singing We Gather Together, number 349 in the gray hymnal. Good morning.
Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Ann Arbor. If you're newer to our community or we haven't had a chance to meet yet, I'm the Reverend Manish Mishra-Marzetti, serving our community as senior minister. It's my privilege to welcome you this morning on behalf of myself and our chancel team. In particular, welcome to this special Visitor Sunday if you are new to us or a first time are still in the process of getting to know us better. Whether you're here with us in person or live streaming from home right at this moment or watching on demand at a later time, we're glad that you've chosen to be together with one another and with us. Our community has been meeting continuously here in Ann Arbor since 1865, helping bring alive a message and vision of a liberal and free faith, one in which each of us is able to explore and discover what it means to be human as we support one another on that human journey through our collective love and care. If you're a first-time visitor or newer to our community, we invite you to join us this Sunday in our social hall for our Social Justice Fair, which will take place immediately at the conclusion of today's service. If you're live streaming and you're newer, we invite you to take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat. You may choose to share where you're joining us from. I know that members of our community will warmly welcome you and greet you in that space. If you're watching later in the week on demand, we invite you to contact Reverend Mandy Beal, who is our acting coordinator of the membership journey, or truly any member of our staff team, including myself. Any of us would be delighted to give you a deeper orientation to our congregation or to Unitarian Universalism more broadly. We also invite you to fill out our newcomers survey, which is at uua.org/newcomers survey. Looking toward the week ahead, one announcement to share. Next Sunday is our community's Climate Revival Sunday. In addition, the day preceding, the Saturday, we'll have workshops during the afternoon, which will include a special guest, Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt, our Unitarian Universalist Association president. She'll be joining us next weekend for both days for our Saturday afternoon workshops as well as our Sunday services. It is a wonderful opportunity to directly be in relationship with and hear from our denomination's president. We invite you to join us for these events, and if you are able to join us for the Saturday afternoon workshops, please take a moment to register for them via the UUAA website. As I've mentioned, this Sunday we are intentionally welcoming and including those who are newer to our congregation and or Unitarian Universalism. In that spirit, we will reflect broadly today on our religious tradition, including the meaning and difference that Unitarian Universalism can have in our lives individually and as a community. You'll hear a variety of perspectives tailored for newcomers that will give you a glimpse into who and what Unitarian Universalism is. And now, as we continue our worship service and move into a deeper space of reflection and togetherness, I invite you to ground yourselves in your heart.
At the beginning of our service, we join Unitarian Universalists around the world in lighting our chalice, a ritual that unites us across distance. The flaming chalice is the symbol of our faith, and it has a proud history. During World War II, the Unitarian Service Committee commissioned the chalice design as a sign of safe passage for those fleeing Nazi persecution. Each time we light a chalice, we rekindle the flame of freedom, justice, and human rights that burned in Europe all those many years ago. Each time we greet the light that shines within each of us, the spark of life that dwells in our heart. Each time we see each other's faces reflected in that light. If you are visiting with us this morning, you may have already noticed that chalices abound in our spaces. Almost every room has at least one actual chalice, to say nothing of the pictures, paintings, quilts, and other creative renditions. We are surrounded by chalices. We carry our chalice wherever we go, a reminder of the light we harbor and the light we give. This morning, Ash Dwyer will kindle our flame, and I invite them to join us now. Those of you watching online may join us by lighting your own chalice or candle and entering your location in the chat. Together, let us say, we light this chalice for the light of truth. We light this chalice for the warmth of love. We light this chalice for the energy of action. We light this chalice for the harmony of peace. Thank you, Ash. Unlike those of many faiths, UU services do not include the recitation of a creed, a fixed set of beliefs to which all are bound, for the simple reason that no such creed exists. We are a non-creedal covenantal faith, bound together not by specific doctrines, but by the covenantal promises we make to each other about our shared life in community. Through our covenant, we lift up not belief, but rather intention, a vow to live together peacefully and lovingly as we search for our own truths. We make this pledge knowing full well that should we falter, we will act in faith to repair the breach, renew our vows, and begin again in love. A deeply rooted covenant, we have learned, is ever renewing. Covenants so central to our faith are embedded in our communal life. Many of our groups have their own covenant: the Board of Trustees, the staff, chalice circles, youth groups. Each has its own thoughtfully crafted covenant. Our chalice and our covenant travel together, ambassadors of our faith. And as we speak the words of our covenant together, all are invited into our circle. Whoever you are, and whatever brings you here this morning, your voice is welcome. Please join me as together we say, the spirit of this church is love, and service is its law. This is our covenant with each other, to dwell together in peace, to search for truth in love, and to help one another. You may have noticed a change on the slide this morning. As some of you know, and others may not, this past year has been one of transition and deep transformation for myself and for my family. We might look a little different now, but as I have come to understand, different can be pretty great. In honor of this new chapter in my life, of rediscovering my whole true self, I've decided to embrace my original name as my forever name. And so here I am, Stella Vera Gorlin, absolutely delighted to know you. It feels so good to love yourself and to be yourself. And you know what feels even better? To be held in the embrace of a loving, welcoming community when you're on that journey to self-discovery. This is what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist, to celebrate love, transformation, equity, interdependence, generosity, pluralism, and justice. Those are our UU values. Lifting one another up, fighting for every person's right to thrive, celebrating the beautiful mosaic of our lived experience on this miraculous planet. Our story for all ages this morning perfectly captures how it feels when you find out that you are loved exactly as you are. You might just want to dance. My Shadow is Purple, written and illustrated by Scott Stewart. My dad has a shadow that's blue as a berry, and my mom's is as pink as a blossoming cherry. There's only those choices, a 2 or a 1. But mine is quite different. It's both, and it's none. If theirs are straight, then mine is a circle, for my shadow's different. My shadow is purple. My shadow loves playing with all sorts of toys, things loved by girls and things loved by boys. I dance with the pinks as they turn and they spin, and play sports with the blues as they lose and they win. Some of my friends think I'm simply confused, but the thing I love most is not having to choose. Some tell me I'm blue. Only blue can be strong, but my mom's strong too, so I think they're wrong. Some tell me I'm pink, 'cause pink's the most caring, but Dad's always crying and loving and sharing. Why can't I love sport and dancing and trains and ponies and glitter and engines and planes? Why must I choose and exclude all the rest? I love choosing both because both is the best. And now it is time for the greatest event. The school dance is here. The invite's been sent. I'm ready to rock, and I'm feeling cute. My mom made my skirt, and my dad made my suit. I bounce through the door and gasp as I enter. The room split in two, right down the center. Blue shadows go left and pink shadows right. Once we're split up, we'll kickstart this night. Everyone laughs as they head to their zones, and right in the middle, I'm left all alone. I look to the left where the shadows are blue. They wave me over, saying, "You are blue too." Then I look to the right as I struggle to think. They call me over. "Come on, you are pink." The teacher walks up looking rather amused. "I know you are different, but now you must choose." My heart just starts racing and tears fill my eyes. I know I must choose, but don't understand why. The room has gone quiet,
and everyone's looking. My cheeks are so red, they feel like they're cooking. If I cannot be purple, then I cannot stay. I'll leave and go home, I quietly say. I slowly start walking. My legs are like jello. A voice breaks the silence. My shadow is yellow. My eyes open wide. My shadow, it gawks. A child walks to the middle, looks up and talks. There's more than 2 colors our shadows can be. I was too scared before, but blue is not me. I know from outside blue fits like a glove, but my shadow's yellow, which to me feels like love. They turn with a smile and take hold of my hand. Who wants to join us? There's room here to stand. At first, no one moves. Then, a hand in the air. My shadow's as brown as a big grizzly bear. My shadow is red. Mine's silver. Mine's green. Mine's violet. Mine's orange. Mine's aquamarine. They all rush to join us, whatever their color. Blue, pink, and purple, and shadows called other. I look at each shadow, no 2 are the same. On each happy face, there's no trace of shame. Each different and special and fully unique. No color's stronger and no color's weak. The teacher comes over as we're joined as one. Whatever your color, start dancing, have fun. The end. Perhaps the most important part of the text of our newly adopted values articulation comes right at the beginning. It goes, "Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. Inseparable from one another, our shared values are." Inseparable from one another. My shadow is purple is certainly about transformation and pluralism. We see a child learning to love themselves and a community learning how to embrace its diversity. But the story certainly also lifts up love, justice, equity, generosity, and interdependence. Everything that we do here on Sunday morning and beyond is doing the work of living these inseparable shared values. Sharing this story with you is just one example of that work, and not only because it is a charming illustration of what we're all about. This is the first day of Banned Books Week, and this book, this sweet story about self-love and inclusivity, along with its prequel, My Shadow is Pink, is one of the most banned books in the country. It seems ridiculous, but it's very real and it's very urgent. An elementary teacher in Georgia was fired last year for reading it to her students. Schools and libraries across the country are facing these kinds of censorship battles, and in too many places they are losing. We are losing. According to data compiled by the American Library Association, there were 4,240 unique book titles targeted for censorship just in 2023. Unique titles. The number of titles targeted for censorship at public libraries, not school libraries, public libraries, increased by 92% just from 2022. And this accounted for about half of all book challenges in 2023. And our school libraries also saw an 11% increase over 2022 numbers, and those numbers were already huge. This is deeply, deeply alarming. The forces of division are loud, and they have the backing of powerful interests. We here have an obligation to fight on behalf of librarians, educators, families, and children. We have to show up for all of our kids. We have to show up for our values, and we have to show up for a way forward that centers love over hate. Living into our values, that's a pretty good start. Let us heed the call together. And now, before we move more deeply into this time of worship and reflection, we bid farewell to the youngest among us as they follow their adult leaders out of the sanctuary to their gathering spaces. If you are visiting today, your children are, of course, welcome to stay or to go. Please join me in singing with love and tenderness as we conclude the time for all ages.
This morning, as we include newcomers and visitors in our service, we'll take a moment to hear from a newer member of our community about their experience of UUAA. Would you warmly welcome into our pulpit, Ash Dwyer.
Good morning, y'all. My name is Ash, they, them, and I first came to UUAA in October of last year. I had just moved to Michigan without knowing anyone here. I was scared, and I knew I needed to build connections fast if I was going to survive. With all that fear, though, I had an unignorable suspicion that I could build more community, be a truer version of myself, and be of more authentic service here in Michigan than I ever could in Texas. But where and how and with who? I could have never guessed that I'd find what I was looking for in congregational life. I'd attended a UU service once back in Texas before I moved, and after some research, I knew I aligned with the values, but I was resistant to the idea that healthy congregational life could even be real. I was at a place in my life where I believed the spiritual path had to be a solo mission, and that's some audacity. As a freshly hatched baby gay with pockets full of church hurt, I visited UUAA for the first time, brimming with skepticism toward any kind of spiritual community. I had nothing to lose, though, telling myself I'm only going for novelty. I wasn't really intending to stick around. After all, as a church, I doubted they would put their money and time where their mouth is. I questioned how involved they would really be outside of their own building walls. Could I actually be myself or grow in a space like this? Or was it only a matter of time before I was rejected for something? My first visit, that inner monologue of fear and criticism was quickly hushed by the energy of radical welcome and actionable sincerity. I was taken aback by how drawn in I felt by the welcome team. I was reverent, listening to the social justice connection Vets for Peace. I found myself humbled, totally heart-quieted, listening to DEI leader Paula Cole-Jones proclaim how UU values are in constant adaptation to be anti-racist in ways that transform both the congregation and the outside community. So needless to say, I decided to come back and then come back again and again. In weeks that followed, In the weeks that followed, I began making friends, and I was offered ways to pitch in my time. Without me noticing or feeling like I was really trying, I suddenly found myself interconnected in this web of beautiful people who were safe, imperfect, reflective, inclusive, silly, and intentional. I received comfort in the services and found healing in the rituals and meditations. I got to learn from and participate in the radical social justice efforts constantly ongoing within the congregation. And outside the building walls, I was touched when I took a walk around Ipsy Pride and saw so many of my beloved friends, lay leaders, and ministers. Needless to say, I decided to become a member, a process that was notably fun. All this started by accident, by showing up to a service with nothing to lose but a mind full of doubt and spite. Now, this to me is a place where I don't wish for anything to be different than it presently is, where my heart can settle in a calm but joyful kind of contentment. Yet at the same time, I know I'm riding a wave of constant growth and transformation with my congregation. I'm still learning about the meaning of interdependence and UU values. That's how beautiful love and community really is. It suspends the individual self in a state of restoration. And in that space where the heart is still, the self can be of interdependent service in ways it could never dream of alone. It's an absolute pleasure to not be alone with all of you. I'm grateful to be a member of UUAA.
If you want to know who we are as a congregation and a faith tradition, look at the work we do. From volunteering with our children and youth, to showing up in solidarity with the Palestinian people, from tending to the grounds and gardens, to building houses for Habitat for Humanity and making meals for Alpha House. We register voters and we collect signatures for progressive referendums. We advocate for just policing and anti-racism initiatives. We invest in green energy and climate justice. All of this and much, much more. This is our work. This is our shared vision. Our weekly offering is another way that we affirm our commitment to that vision of a more just and peaceful future. There are many ways to give. You can drop cash or checks in the collection basket as they pass you by. For those that prefer a digital option, you can text UUAA to 73256, or you can go to uuaa.org/giving. However you choose to give, thank you for your generosity. Today's offering will now be given and gratefully received. Will the ushers please come forward? And as they do, I invite you to rise in body or spirit, wherever you may be, and say with me the words of dedication. To the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives and these our offerings. Thank you.
Today's reading is from an essay entitled Experience by the Reverend John Behrens, former president of the Unitarian Universalist Association. Reverend Behrens writes, in Unitarian Universalist congregations, we do not try to make one another fit a given pattern of experience. But we do discover together that there are religious dimensions to all our varied human experience. For us, religious experience is direct and personal. It may be joyous, a transformative moment of awakening like being present at a child's birth. Or it may be as painful as the birth itself, or as wrenching as grief. Sometimes it takes something very close to our own death or the death of someone we love to break through our usual defenses and remind us what a gift it is to be alive and to be able to love. Part of all authentic experience is deeply inward, beginning to trust what the Unitarian minister, the Reverend William Ellery Channing, called the power of God within.
Remaining seated, I'd invite us to take a few moments to be present to the reading we've just heard through a sung moment of meditation. We'll be singing hymn 1009, 1009 in our teal hymnals. It is a round, or it moves into being a round. If you know the multiple parts, feel free to sing the part that resonates with you. I want to invite you into a time machine with me for a moment, and one going back several decades to the high school version of me. And if you were to have met me in high school, you would recognize me by the sub-community's known and commonly accepted dress code and appearance: black clothing, Doc Marten boots, preferably some part of your head partially shaved. That group that I was a part of, or subsection of high school, was firmly anti-establishment, and so we all studied the language of the enemy together. We studied Russian. I was a super closeted gay kid, not even really out to myself, having grown up in a very traditional, very conservative Hindu household. And yet, if you knew me and you paid attention, some of my music choices would have given me away. Erasure, Bronski beat, if anybody remembers or knows Bros, if you know, you know. That year, we were studying American literature, reading things like The Crucible and The Scarlet Letter that painted the picture of Puritan America. Some of the birth roots of our faith tradition date back to that time period, that cultural setting. And we also read what was described to me as, a short little essay. We're going to read this little essay called Self-Reliance by Ralph Waldo Emerson. He wrote this in 1840 at the age of 37. Here's some of what he wrote. Society everywhere is in conspiracy against the personhood of every one of its members. Society is a joint stock company in which the members agree for the better securing of bread to each shareholder to surrender the liberty and culture of the eater. The virtue in most request is conformity. Self-reliance is its aversion. It loves not realities and creators, but names and customs. Whosoever would be a human being must be a nonconformist. They who would gather immortal palms must not be hindered by the name of goodness, but must explore instead if it be goodness. Nothing is at last sacred but the integrity of your own mind. What is asked for in exchange for a livelihood, for a salary, for the ability to live is conformity. Self-reliance is its aversion. Whosoever would be a human being must be a nonconformist. Better still, nothing is sacred, nothing but the integrity of your own mind. My Star Wars loving rebel heart sang with joy. These individualistically affirming words resonated deeply with my soul, with my being. Self-reliance became definitely my favorite piece of writing we read that year and possibly throughout all of high school. You can imagine the enthusiasm I felt when I discovered about a decade later that Ralph Waldo Emerson was not just a Unitarian, but an ordained religious leader within Unitarianism. I needed no further testimonial than that. That alone was enough. His presence in our movement told me that there was very likely more than enough room for me within Unitarian Universalism, me and my quirky, nonconformist, anti-establishment self. And I was right. There has been more than enough room for me, someone who was born and raised, who is still a devout Hindu, a Buddhist practitioner, someone who was baptized into Christianity by choice as an adult, a practitioner of indigenous shamanic traditions, both North American and South American, a dedicated lover of science, especially physics, someone who has lived in the Middle East and studied Islam, a kid who grew up in a Jewish neighborhood and thought that all of America was Jewish until the age of 10, someone who is inspired by art and music, and even more so finds transcendence in art and music. A person who communes with nature and finds in that communion mysticism. A gay dad with a multiracial family. A confirmed humanist. All of that, all of me, has found a home here in Unitarian Universalism. And what I've just described is not unusual for us. Many of you have equally varied and eclectic backgrounds. If you're new to us, and what I've just described sounds like it might be a bit like your own self, your own journey, I would say to you, welcome home. Of all the traditions I have studied, we here in Unitarian Universalism give the individual maximum freedom to discover and express who we each are. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And we're not simply a gathering of siloed individuals. It is possible to have those types of collectives or gatherings. We, Unitarian Universalists, have shared values, which we've heard a little bit about already, and a shared sense of ethics. For centuries within the Christian tradition, there has been a debate between, do you gather a community around right beliefs, or do you gather a community around good actions, works? Is it some combination equally of both, or does one matter more than the other? That debate has existed in traditional Christianity for centuries. We in Unitarian Universalism unequivocally, 100%, come down on the side of good actions. In fact, I could riff off a scriptural line from the Gospel of Matthew, make it a little different, and say that we Unitarian Universalists are known by the good that we do, by our deeds, by our actions. We allow our actions to prove who we are, what we value, and to show what we're trying to bring alive in the world. If you're new to us and you're joining us on a day on which we're holding a social justice fair immediately after this service in our social hall, and we invite you to join us there. You'll have an opportunity to see firsthand exactly what those good actions of our community are, what our values are, and how we bring them alive in the wider world around us. Circling back to Ralph Waldo Emerson, about a decade or so after being introduced to his writings in high school, I made the decision to go on to seminary. In part, the plan was that I wanted to become a scholar of the intersection of transcendentalism and Eastern religion. Emerson and others of that philosophical movement were inspired by Hinduism and Buddhism. And I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to go really, really deep into that. Enter into the picture one of my former seminary professors, Reverend John Burens, who we heard from earlier in the service, former president of our association. As he learned of my love, even devotion to the transcendentalists, he posed a question to me. He said, Manish, do you know what the transcendentalists missed? What did they not fully understand or develop? I was such a fanboy, I had no idea that they had missed anything. And so I just kind of stared at him. And he wryly and bemusedly responded, community. They're so focused on individual freedom, they have an underdeveloped sense of, or even maybe no sense of, community. I kind of got it in the moment, and I kind of didn't. We live in a society that in 1,000+ small or big ways, pushes us apart from one another. We see this most prominently day to day today in our politics and in our civic life, the ways in which we are rend from one another. But that's not the only way at all. Any of us who have been through our academic processes here in the United States, even if just high school, most certainly if you've been through undergrad or graduate training, we are taught to view our peers as competition. Competition for grades, competition for the attention of our teachers so that they can notice us, invest their time and energy in us, perhaps even be a future reference for further studies or for jobs. All of that being viewed as in limited supply and something that we have to compete for. That sense of competition, being pitted against one another, can continue on into whatever professional tracks we eventually pursue. It certainly did for me. My first career in the State Department as a Foreign Service officer, your peers were not your friends. You had to be a little bit wary around them, very careful around them. These were competition. Your peers were competition for the time, attention, and mentoring of higher ups, for choice assignments, for future promotions. You certainly did not want your peers discovering your faults or shortcomings. I had only known all of this training and acculturation up to this point in my life. And here I was at Harvard Divinity School, surrounded by these weirdo Unitarian Universalists, my peers, who all hung out with one another and socialized, and within the first 5 minutes of conversation, they'll tell you everything that's wrong with their life, the things they aren't getting right, the things that have flummoxed them, the things they've gotten wrong. I'd be sitting there listening, what are you all doing? Aren't we competing for jobs against one another in just a couple of years? Like, this does not compute. I do not understand what you all are doing. So I got to know my UU peers enough. They got to know me enough. And at that arm's length distance, we were acquainted. Then came my final year in seminary. I went through a divorce. It was this fall, actually, this month, 20 years ago. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Manish, how could Manish possibly have gone through a divorce 20 years ago? He's too young. And if you're thinking that, I thank you. Now, the thing about marriage and divorce in the United States, it is specific to us as a culture. Oh, we have not lost our Puritanism. We have not. Ask any divorcee. The first thing people want to know when there's a divorce going on, who screwed up? It does not matter how much one or both people in the couple say that it is amicable, it is a, consent divorce. Both parties want all the common friends to stay friends with everybody. It does not play out that way. And it certainly didn't for me. Everybody wanted to know whose fault it was. I asked for the divorce, and so it was my fault. And all those decade-plus friends, it was an 11-year relationship, all those decade-plus friends, all the meaningful friendships I had in my 20s, in the moment, to me, seemed to disappear as no one was calling to see how I was doing on the other side of one of the most difficult decisions I've ever had to make, walking away from a primary source of support in my life. Not only did I lose that, I lost all these common friends who flocked to my poor ex who wasn't expecting this and was grief-stricken and didn't deserve what I had inflicted on him. I had never felt more completely alone in my life, and I spiraled into an unexpected depression that kept getting worse. There are 2 times in my life when I have struggled with suicidal ideation, and this was the second of the 2, and it was by far the more serious of the 2. As I was in this spiraling rut, I stopped doing much of the things that I had. Anything optional dropped out of my calendar as I isolated and just secluded and tried to deal with my emotions and not really figuring out how to do that. I stopped going to UU things. I was in a what's called a study group of Unitarian Universalist peers that were preparing for our professional credentialing process. I stopped going to those meetings. And while my longtime friends, not a single one of them, took any interest in how I was doing, reached out to me with support, my UU peers, who really didn't know me that well at all, were calling me and leaving voice messages. This was back in the day when people listened to voice messages. They were leaving me voice messages all the time. It was really annoying. I kept thinking, you people don't know me. Why are you leaving all these messages for me? Finally, the one came that peeved me off. This UU colleague, peer, friend, Manish, I know you're not returning any of our calls. We're just going to keep calling you over and over and over again until you respond. I was so annoyed. I was like, I'll call, I'll do the courtesy return call back, and then I'm done. Then I don't have to keep getting these messages. I called back. What I thought would be a brief phone call, not of much substance or impact, wound up being a deeply caring interaction in which the person wanted to know how I genuinely am, what I'm going through, how they could be of support to me. Then came the invitation for, okay, yeah, I know you don't want to go out to a restaurant and be around lots of people. How about we just go for a walk someplace quiet? Oh, I could do that. That was all right. And as soon as this one friend stopped hanging out or looking out for me, another UU peer colleague friend showed up. And then as soon as that person, then another one showed up. I began to wonder if they had come up with some pastoral care plan that I didn't know about because it was so seamless. And on this went for weeks into months, proving to me, showing me that I wasn't alone. And that community was more than what I had up until then understood it to be. These Unitarian Universalist peers saved me. They kept me hopeful and alive at a time when those things seemed hard. For us, Unitarian Universalist, community is where the real magic happens. It's where each of us, individually, we run into the limits of what any one of us can know or understand or be. And that's where, and this is my kind of preferred little metaphor, we become like these tumbling rocks, polishing each other, getting even smoother. We come together to expand our understanding of what it means to be human, what we've been able to figure out. We learn from one another and help each other. We engage across the invariable differences that exist amongst us Unitarian Universalists, and we UUs have an intense range of difference among us. We are, as you've heard me say, a community of practice where we practice deep listening. We practice the skillfulness of how to be present from one another and learn from one another in service to something greater than any one of us. One of my spiritual teachers, Meg Wheatley, has written a poem about this. It's entitled Turning to One Another. She writes, "There's no power greater than a community discovering what it cares about. Ask what's possible, not what's wrong. Ask what's possible, and then keep asking that. Notice what you care about. Assume that many others share your dreams. Be brave enough to start a conversation that matters. Talk to people you know, talk to people you don't know, talk to people you never typically talk to. Be intrigued by the differences that you hear. Expect to be surprised. Treasure curiosity more than your own certainty. Invite in everybody who cares to work on what is possible. Acknowledge that everyone is an expert on something. Know that creative solutions come from connections. Remember, you don't fear people whose story you know. Real listening always brings people closer together. Trust that meaningful conversations can change your world. Rely on human goodness and stay together. Community, at its best, is all of these things, not one or two or a couple of these things, but the invitation is to do and be all of these things, noticing what you care about, being brave enough to start conversations that matter, talking to people you never typically talk to, being intrigued by difference, treasuring curiosity more than your own certainty, inviting in anyone and everyone who's willing to work towards making the world better, really listening, not to prove that you're right about anything, but to learn across a difference, meaningful conversations, finding them and engaging in them, and doing the work of coming back over and over again to community, staying together, trusting, relying that who we are and what we're trying to do is good. We do all of this not for ourselves alone. Who and what we are in community spans across time. Earlier generations of Unitarian Universalists lived into exactly this ethos here, just as we in the present are striving to, just as we are nurturing and holding this space for generations yet to come. That goodness, that striving, that ethos spans not just time, but geographical space. There are people in this community, staff and laity alike, who are leaders locally, regionally, nationally, working to bring alive a vision of beloved community, all that we Unitarian Universalists hold dear. If what you're hearing sounds like what you might need in your life, what you're looking for, we're glad that you're here. Take your time in getting to know us better and keep coming back. There is room here for you.
Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing number 1020 in the teal hymnal, Woyaya. We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within. Get there, heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough. We'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there.
Beloveds, take a moment to look around this sanctuary, also into those cameras. You are a part of us too, this community as well. These are your companions on this journey of striving, exploring, and learning day by day what it means to be human, to be the very best of who you can be. It is a journey that does not end until our time on this planet ends, for we are constantly evolving and learning and growing. Go out into this new week knowing that you are cheered on, you are supported, encouraged by all here to be the very best of who you are and who you can be. Go in love, go in peace, know that you are held by that until we are together again. May it be so.